What's going on, everybody? How is it going today? So this is going to be a BGcast special episode, the FKN panel, uh, moral decay and expansion of spirituality. I am happy to be doing this special episode. Of course, I have a guest with me from FKN who is going to be sitting here and chopping it up with me as we discuss these two topics. You guys have seen her on my show before. She does Quantum Guides and Aliens and Angels podcast. We have the OG who's been holding it down for a very long time. Let's welcome Karen Holton to the stage. What is up, Karen? How are you today?
Oh, I'm good. I'm good, Stephen. Thanks so much for having me back. I love having conversations with you.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, let's kind of dive right in. I think one of the things we've been seeing a lot of lately, and we were just kind of chatting about this before the show for a little bit, is we see not so much in the awakened community, but in the general collective, we are starting to see what I would call almost some sort of moral decay that is starting to kind of occur. And one of the biggest things that has brought this to light for me was, believe what you want about this. I have my own thoughts about this. This goes out to everybody. The whole Charlie Kirk assassination that went down. And whether it was, staged, whether it was real, despite all that, one of the biggest things I thought this was almost like a litmus test for humanity.
Hmm.
And I think, this test was, do you have empathy or do you not have empathy? And we kind of saw all across the board almost a celebration of this man's death. And we saw kind of people lose their jobs over it. It was all over the media. And I kind of even see it in the streets where I'm at, man. People are just kind of just in their moral structure just decomposing the general collective. And now I know you were talking about some stuff that's been happening in Canada with this, so why don't you enlighten us on what's been going on up there?
Well, basically, and this is just my own personal opinion. I'm not an expert. I'm not a political scientist or anything like that. Okay. But the way it looks to me is there is layers and layers and layers of problems. And we are having mass immigration, and all the jobs are gone, and the government's giving out to businesses to hire these. They're not immigrants. I don't even know what the word is. This is the thing. We're not even really given language to talk about these things. But immigration, people apply, they go through certain, well, hoop jumping, for lack of a different, uh, for a word. They have to learn the basic English, they have to learn something about our customs, all that kind of stuff. Eventually, they end up becoming, landed immigrants or Canadian citizens or whatever. Well, this is not happening. It's just importing, I don't know, probably millions of people over time, and they're all super stressed and and completely ignorant of our customs. For instance, just to
Hmm.
not to be too much information, but it'll give you guys a picture. If you don't live in Canada, we've got all kinds of immigrants that think it's okay to just shit on the beaches. Well, pretty much shit anywhere, shit into takeout cups. There's a whole lot of shitting going on. And things like fishing for salmon when they're spawning, when we're not supposed to, and all kinds of things. And on the one hand, it's not their fault. They haven't been told, they haven't been taught, they have no idea. They're coming to the land of plenty. We don't know what BS they've been told before they even arrive. Now, we do have a lot of people who, I will use the word immigrate here, and they have a lot of money. So if they have a lot of money, and they come in as a completely different thing than these stressed people, and they're not being welcomed by the majority of Canadians, because the majority of Canadians are out of work, or all kinds of problems here that we're more online with what's going on in Australia or England than the US. And so what's happened is this tremendous amount of stress and anger, and people are starting to face off against each other. Oh, that's the other thing, crime. So they changed the bail laws here so that anyone who's here from another country, they this is going to sound crazy, but this is how it is. They won't prosecute them with the full extent of the
Mhm.
law, even for things like home invasions, car theft, murder, assault, because it might interfere with their ability to actually become landed immigrants here. They don't, and the government doesn't want anything to interrupt. Like, it's so important that we get these mass population influx happening. So, like, honestly, I'm all for immigration, but it has to be done properly. People have to have enough, there has to be enough places to rent or homes or places to stay. There has to be enough food. There has to be enough medical opportunities for people. Like, all these things are just being crowded out, and people are becoming angrier and angrier. And people who never were racist are actually becoming kind of racist, because I'm not saying Canadians are racist. Some are, some aren't. I mean, it's like everywhere.
That's a,
But I'm just saying there's a tremendous amount of stress here. And then, of course, the leadership, they are so arrogant and egotistical that they don't even try to hide it. And they're purely trying to establish the WEF objectives here in Canada.
mm,
It's almost like whatever world leader gets there first wins some kind of prize. God only knows what that is. We won't get into that. But so yeah, things are pretty stressful here in Canada. Another problem is there's a myth that if you go to university, you go to college, you work really hard, what you get
mhm,
out of there is not a job. You get $100,000 or more in debt and no way to pay it. And you can't even get a job at Tim Hortons Coffee. And Tim Hortons Coffee is like an example of what used to be a Canadian company, and they will not hire any white people. They will only hire people of color, which is great for the people of color. But,
mhm.
there's just some weird dynamics, and I just stay busy and do the best I can, working on me, trying to be the change that I want to see in the world. That's the best thing that I can do. Be kind to people that I meet. Um, be work out my intergenerational dysfunction with family members. All this kind of stuff that's exhausting, but absolutely necessary for me to evolve as a human being.
Absolutely no, and I think you're doing the right thing there. And yeah, we have similar things going on here. I know LA County has what is called a no arrest law at this point in time. So I mean, basically what they can do is let's say somebody goes off and murders somebody and they get caught, they're basically given a court date. They're not they're not taken into jail. They're not held accountable really. And of course, as we can see all over Southern California right now, this there people have been taking advantage of this. I mean, people have been looting homes, have been looting businesses. I mean, it's like this in a lot of the major cities here in the United States as well. And what's even better is it's starting to happen here in Denver, where I'm at. So that's why I'm looking to get out of the Denver area. We're looking to move a little bit north and up north, maybe closer to Chris in Colorado,
Yeah.
just to kind of avoid this. But it's almost as if there is, I mean, call it an anti-human agenda. I know
Mhm.
we've called it this before, but it is. It's blatantly anti-human. They want to increase the crime. They want to increase all of this stuff under the guise of civil justice. So, and of course, though, what we can do, like what you're doing, Karen, is we can ultimately just be the change we wish to see in this world and set this example. But the other thing I've said this, one of the biggest things that would solve this, and I want to get your thoughts on this, is it's bringing a spiritual way of life back to our collective.
Mhm.
And when I say this, I see the look on a lot of people's faces. They give me this look, and I'm like, I'm not talking about, bringing church back into things. I mean, in fact, if you don't like a spiritual way of life, we can call it the path of the good person. If you don't like that or other label that I have. And that's ultimately what I
Mhm.
think is going to help us, is we look at this world that we live in today and it's so devoid of human connection. I mean, we have dudes marrying AI girlfriends. We have
Mm.
females even who are going after AI boyfriends. And
Mhm.
I think ultimately rekindling the spark of human connection would take us a long way. And then implementing this spiritual way of life or the path of the good person back onto the pedestal in our society would do us a lot of good. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, I agree 100%. The other thing I forgot to mention that I think is important is in Canada, you're not allowed to defend your home. So we don't, they're
Mm.
taking away the 22s and the last of the rifles that you go shoot gophers with if you're on a farm or whatever. They're taking all those away. But you're not allowed to defend yourself. So now the head of the police departments in the RCMP, which is the Canadian Federal Police Department, are saying leave your keys by the front door so that if there's a home invasion, they can just grab the keys and leave you alone and let them take your vehicle, let them steal whatever they want. But now it's even gotten to the point where if someone's doing a home invasion and they're threatening your family, and I'm talking about raping your kids, all kinds of horrible atrocities, you're not allowed to for self-defense. You have to take it and go, thank you very much, until they're ready to leave. And if you do try to defend yourself, you're the one who will go to jail. You are the one who will be prosecuted. It's so bizarre. But Stephen, I just want to add to what you were saying. I think the whole objective is to keep us so stressed and and in Canada and the US, they're finding out about all kinds of illegal government activities and things that are, that are causing problems, and a lot of money getting funneled out to the friends, the crony friends of, the higher ups and all that. But I think it's to keep us at a level of stress where we're all under this anxiety. None of us is sleeping properly. Then it's more likely, not saying for everyone, I'm careful what I eat, but it's more likely you're going to pig
Mhm.
out on stuff you shouldn't be eating, take all kinds of drugs. And I'm not talking about pharmaceuticals, which is another whole kettle of fish. Because when you're not feeling well, you go to a GP, a regular doctor, and he prescribes pills or that or surgery. That's your two choices here. And most people don't have enough money to go see a naturopath or alternative health practitioner. And so I think it's part of the plan, the immigration, the constant stress. And, really, unless we do some really serious self contemplation, what happens is, I think this is key, is it's easier to project our shadow onto others and punish the other for the shadow we carry within. So I think shadow work has to be really in there for us to develop as a spiritual self and a more moral identity. And so what's happening is this projection is terrible. It goes on in families, it goes in neighborhoods, it happens in the job place, it happens at every level of society, this projection. And that is extremely dangerous, in my opinion.
No, I completely agree. And that's where we kind of, and I don't, I said this on Facebook one time because I saw actually a post that happened in Canada. There was a guy, I guess the guy came in, this guy tried breaking into this home, and the guy basically defended his home and he ended up getting charged.
Yeah.
And this is what I'm gonna say. And a lot of people, when I posted this, people got upset at what I said, but I really don't care at this point because in my eyes, if you have the means to get yourself out of a situation, and you have the means to protect yourself, self-preservation is a very spiritual thing. That's been given to us, and that's why I honestly feel there needs to be a what I would call reestablishment of stand your ground laws. There needs
Hmm.
to be, because this is the thing. All right, if that person enters your home and has the intent to do harm to you and your family, I personally believe that you should be able to do whatever you need to do to make sure that doesn't happen. This is how it's been for ages. Why has it changed
Hmm.
now? And that's why I think you are correct. This is part of their plan. They do want to keep us in a constant state of mesmerized terror. They want to keep us our cortisol levels high, because if our cortisol levels are always high, we're always getting sick.
Hmm.
And it is, yes, do I feel like this moral decay has been implemented and has been part of the plan? Absolutely. Because they want our civilization to fall. They want this one world order to come in and take over and kind of basically bring in, the 15-minute cities, all of this digital currency, all of this stuff. So I'm with you, Karen. I do think that this is part of the plan. And ultimately, I think what it's going to take is us kind of standing up at this point, and it comes to a point where I think, we have to look at what's in front of us, and we have to act and adjust ourselves accordingly. And like you were saying, doing all of the inner work, doing all of the shadow work, and helping ourselves heal, ultimately that's going to bring to the surface in people's eyes what is actually true and what is actually right. So I agree with you, and I've been seeing that happen here in Colorado too. Denver is really weird about self-defense. I mean, it's happening, and I hate to bring the bipartisan thing into this, but it seems to be happening in these very heavily leftist areas. It seems like, this is the ultimate um ends all of what they're trying to achieve, is they do want some kind of lawless land where they can have an excuse for more security, and to more surveillance and all of these other things that come with this. I mean, you even look at what happened with Palantir, um, just as of recently too, starting to, look at American citizens. I mean, ultimately, what I feel at this point we have to do is we just have to start saying no. We have to start taking our power back, and we have to start taking our personal agency and our personal sovereignty, and we need to start standing our ground. I mean, what are your thoughts on this?
Oh, I agree 100%. And like for instance, the last time I was in the airport, which was in the summer, and they wanted me to go into one of these big machines and raise my arms and get super heavily irradiated with God knows what, to
Mhm.
see if I had any hidden weapons or anything like that. And I said, no, I'm not going in there. That's not good for my health. And they said, well, if you don't go in there, we have to do a full pat down. I says, that's okay, frisk me. I got nothing to hide. So the woman who had to frisk me, she's a little bit embarrassed, she's a nice younger woman. And she says, would you like us to go somewhere private for this? And I says, nope, I got nothing to hide. Go for it. Frisk me,
Mhm.
baby. And she had to frisk me from head to toe and pat me down left, right, and center. And I was okay with it because I wasn't getting in their machine. So this is a small no. And so I had to take some inconvenience. Actually, at my age, to get a pat down's a bit of a thrill, I'll tell you. But, sorry, I'm being silly. But
No, you're all good.
a lot of, I think what we need to look at is for convenience. What are we willing to do for convenience? And we've all become so damn soft, me included, Stephen. So that's sort of my thought on it is, we're trading a lot for so-called convenience, or what we're sold as being convenience. And I think that's another thing to keep in mind.
Absolutely. No, it is. And ultimately what it's going to take is it is going to take a little bit of sacrifice. And that's where we hit the wall, because you're right. Like we have become so accustomed to all of this convenience around us, and we've become so accustomed to having everything at our fingertips, everything going quickly. And ultimately, what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to kind of gut some of these minor inconveniences. We're going to have to, excuse me, take a stand in some way. And I
Mhm.
mean, I know a lot of people did it back in 2020, especially with everything that was going on back then. And so it's almost like a call to arms at this point, because now from what I'm seeing, the UK is trying to roll out the digital ID,
Yes.
and there's been mass protests about it. I mean, from what I've seen, there's been a lot of huge protests about it. People are standing up. And, I think one of the biggest things a lot of people forget is there are more of us than there are of them. I've never seen a whole population of people, and this is multiple countries. This is United States and the Canada included, who are just so afraid of the government. But when you really look at our governments compared to everybody else, in the populace, they are quite small. And it would only take a decent fraction of the population to start standing up and to start kind of speaking and projecting their voice, their intention into all of this to kind of shift things around. And ultimately, where I think it comes from, Karen, is there's a lot of fear in
Hmm.
people at this point in time. I think one of the biggest things we would have to do first before something like that could even take hold is to quell the fear. And ultimately, my big saying in life is this: if you're doing right by yourself, your loved ones, and other humans, you have absolutely nothing to fear. And at this point, we can see that there is an anti-human agenda that is trying to stifle us and crunch us down and remove any last divine spark that there is to be found within us. So ultimately, yeah, I think we need to quell the fear. I think a lot of people are still very afraid. I kind of feel that because, I'm a big, let's burn this down and start fresh kind of guy, but ultimately it's interesting because whenever I say that, I feel the collective fear within
Hmm.
me for this all. And it's like we've almost, in some ways, we have a trauma bond with Stockholm syndrome. And
Yes,
that's
yes,
yes, yes. I want to get your
yes.
thoughts on that. It's almost like we've trauma bonded with Stockholm syndrome at this point.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yes, we have. And that's a tough one to get out of. But people are tired of hearing me say this. But we got to learn how to love ourselves before we can love other people. So you can run around being all peace and love and in the light, but if you haven't done your shadow work, like I already mentioned, then we're going to be prone to projection and other issues holding us back. But it's even more than that. Love is not just this warm, fuzzy, giggly feeling we get towards someone. Love is serious business and it's hard work. It includes faith, it includes patience, it includes mildness. It includes mercy. It includes so many goodness and so many attributes that if we're not actively working on developing those, then we have no choice but to fall into the mire of it all. So I don't have any big sweeping suggestions on what to do on a national level or a state or province level or even on a municipal level. I have only solutions that work for people on a very personal level. That's where we have
Absolutely.
the power. And so, for instance, I'm very careful what I eat. This did not happen overnight. It took me
Mhm.
years to finally get my eating on track. But then what happened is my mental health improved, my physical health improved. I'm not going to the doctor, and this is not medical advice. I'm just saying this because of the algorithm. I'm not going to the doctor. I'm not taking all these pills. I'm not in and out of the psych ward. And I'm not saying that it's your fault if you're having any of these problems. I'm not saying that. I'm saying for me personally, these are the things that I could do. Be on good terms with everybody, be polite, be respectful, even if I disagree. Let people have their opinions, not try to prove them wrong. You know, Stephen, one of the big issues I think we have is we're given a mainstream reality and we're taught this is universal. This is how reality is for everybody. No, it's not. So, you know, if we're looking at something, we all have our own unique perspective. Nobody is stupid. Nobody is ignorant. Everybody is an expert from what they've experienced, what they see, what they've been through. And so I think it's really, really important that we respect other people's difference of perspective. And we're seeing a huge lack of that. And then you add to that the shadow work, and you add to that the convenience, i.e., fast food and things that aren't good for you. And you add to that addictions, and you add to that the stress that's coming down from the government levels and the planners levels. Oh my God. You know what? It's a miracle we're not already out there maiming each other as we speak. I mean, seriously, guys. But it starts with self love, and it's something that most people don't even have a concept for. And it's bloody inconvenient, getting back to the convenience thing.
I completely agree. And, I remember you said that our last panel. And one thing I kind of want to bring up too, and I've brought this up quite a lot on my shows as of recently, is love is more than just an emotion. It's a power and it's a force.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. It can manipulate and alter space and time. It can and just saying that alone right here, on this show, if love can manipulate space and time, imagine what's going to happen to your reality if you learn to love yourself.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And you are going to completely flip your reality upside down in a good way. You are going to be able to gain bearings and have this almost manipulation of space and time. And like one of the biggest things I use in this, have you ever had a dish that was cooked with love? Like, that love went into this dish. It just tastes amazing. And then you can have this very same dish. It could have the same ingredients, same seasonings, somewhere where it's not made with love, and the dish tastes completely different.
Mm-hmm.
This is the alchemical effect of love on the physical reality.
Mm-hmm.
And then also too with time, when you're with loved ones, it seems like time dilates, like you're having like a great conversation, you're hanging out with somebody you care about very deeply, and it's almost like time dilates, it slows down. It's because that love is present. So I want to say I completely agree with that. And also too, it's seeming at this point, kind of sidetracking back a little bit to what we were talking about before, and I want to get your thoughts on this because I've been noticing this kind of start to build. I think for people who are continuing to buy into this false reality, whether it would be the bipartisan system here in the United States, what you guys have going on in Canada, and fully putting all of their eggs in a basket when it comes to this false reality, I think they have opened themselves up to channeling these dark egregoric entities and energies, potentially even, I would say, borderline demonic
Yep.
energies. You can see this behavior start to manifest in people. Like, and I see it too. Like, I know people who, and I use a story too. There was a guy who I'm still friends with him, don't get me wrong. But back about like 10 years ago, this dude was such a spiritual person. And, he was a Kundalini yoga practitioner. And I would look at what he was doing and I'd be like, this is where I need to start going. And now he's dropped all of that. He's lost all of that. And he's been infected by one of these dark egregoric energies. And all he does is just spew this like negative stuff now about Donald Trump, or whoever, this system. And I'm starting to see this emerge in people. And this is what I think, where I have a saying that, there are angels and demons walking the planet at this time, but they are incarnated as human beings. And this is what I think people are doing by continuously buying into this, is they're channeling this dark energy into themselves. I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
Oh, absolutely. So there's a term, this might put off some of your viewers, but there's a term called Trump derangement syndrome. And you know
Hmm.
what? Can all almost so many Canadians have it. And it's not even our politic. We're a different country. It's unbelievable what's happened. But I believe it's a bit of a mind virus. Now, you and I and Chris and the other FKN panelists have talked about um, parasites, not just the physical wiggly things in your intestine, but there's other kinds of parasites too, and I think it overlaps. People should go and watch that show as well. But this whole idea of um, egregores, and some people call the personal ones cervicores. I'm not sure what the correct
Hmm.
terminology is, but basically they just imbue energy. It's basically like a form of dark magic, dark witchcraft, and they imbue power and build up a belief system, and it takes them over. And so, those that person might not believe in a demon bouncing around from hell, but they're just as controlled, if not even more so. And there's all kinds of attachments that we can have. And I think the best remedy for that is to raise the frequency, because the dark stuff
Hmm.
can't coexist in higher dimensional realms or states of frequency. And how do we do that? I know people get tired of me saying it. Watch what you eat, watch your fellowship, and all of that stuff. And people go, yeah, but it's too hard to do all that. Well, then you get what you get, because this is not a time to play games with reality. This is not time for that. This is time to get damn serious about our reality and what we want that to look like and how we want to share that with other people. But I absolutely do believe so. Whatever we're giving our energy to, and even people, and I know I've worked very hard because I've been a worrier. I like to worry about things,
Hmm.
and that can become a whole entity in itself, the worrying. And then I don't know, Stephen, do you want to talk about the whole idea of luge? And
Yeah.
and I know that's true, and I'll tell you why I know that's true, because I have had some irrational mental states where I've been so uncomfortable and unhappy, and I have spoken out loud. I see you. I know what you're doing. Stop feeding off of me. This is my domain. And I banish you. I banish you. I banish you. And it immediately leaves. And so, if we're the kind of being that makes it too challenging for these forces to feed off of, they're going to go feed off someone else. Sad, but true, And so, I don't know. I've just thrown a whole bunch of things in the kettle
No,
there.
no, no,
But
no.
do
I
you want
dig it.
to get into the whole? You know more about the whole luge production and feeding ground than even I know. I think I heard it from you. Learn about the stunning details of ET diversity and culture, along with their advanced ways of living spiritually, which is in no way like anything imagined here on Earth. Transdimensional, Meet the New Neighbors, introduces you to many different looking ET beings, the organic healing pods, the self assembling interior of the big ship, my ET buddy and the orientation process, cultural events like concerts and the joining of ships, as well as off world physical and non physical loving practices. In my contact experience, I learned a great deal about ET origins, transdimensional travel, intergalactic planetary research, and the various options for resettlement. My goal is to introduce you to the look, culture, intention, and technology of beings which are different than humans, in order to reduce your fear and increase your familiarity so that you will remain more rational and grounded once the ET presence escalates beyond debate. Enjoy reading about my real life adventures and notice the things we have in common. So you will see that we are essentially many family lines within one species. Paperback and Kindle versions of Transdimensional Meet the New Neighbors is now available on Amazon worldwide. To gift yourself or someone you love, pick up your copies today.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah. So, I mean, no, Lucia is a very ancient concept. It actually has another name. Lucia is the more modern name, but the ancient name for Lucia is actually called Dukkha. And this is what the Buddhists and the Taoists referred to it as. And you release this energy in two conditions: when you are in a very negative emotional state and you're allowing it to control you and encompass you. Of course, like I posted something about Lush today on X, and of course, like everybody's like, so what? Am I not allowed to feel? And it's like, man, like sometimes in this community, I'm like, I'm not saying you're not, and I already know. I'm just going to go on the record and say everybody knows that I don't support any side of this bipartisan system. I'm an anarchist at heart. So I just brought up the Trump thing with the friend because that's what he was going off on.
Yes.
But no, and people are like, what am I not allowed to feel? And it's like, no, you're allowed to feel. Okay, that's the biggest thing. You're definitely allowed to feel. It's when you allow that negative emotion to consume you. You allow it to rule you. You allow it to dictate your actions, your behaviors towards others. Okay, that is what you can't do. And if you do that, that's what lets go of Loosh. And the other thing that releases Loosh or Dukkha is having an untrained mind. And
Mm-hmm.
look at our entire collective, Karen. When it comes to that. So, having a trained mind is key in not letting yourself be an all you can eat buffet. This is,
Yes.
yes, yeah, you don't. And Karen's right, and the one thing Karen is 100% right about is if you make yourself impossible to feed off of, you will be left alone. They will go away. And that usually comes with doing that inner work. That comes with that personal sovereignty, that personal agency, and that comes with that spiritual discernment and understanding that right now we are being tested on a lot of levels. And we are being tested spiritually, mentally, psychologically. And and at this point, we're dealing with what I would call many separations of the wheat from the chaff, and these separations are going to continue to occur. And my biggest thing to everybody is, what side do you want to be on, the wheat or the chaff? You know what I mean? And ultimately what that's going to take is cultivating that self-love, like I said, the discernment, the personal agency, taking care of your health, not buying into any aspect of this system, learning how to heal yourselves, because we can heal ourselves, guys. Absolutely. So these are the steps that you can take to not be an all-you-can-eat buffet. And I'm sure there's going to be more loose harvests. I'm sure more things are going to happen. A lot of people think, what happened with Charlie Kirk was a loose harvest. I'm not saying it wasn't. You know what I mean? It very well could have been. So, and that's something that, we have to hold awareness of. Like, yes, we're trying to manifest our most joyful, abundant life, our best timeline that brings us closer to our ascension. At the same time, we have to hold in our awareness, though, that we are being subjected to spiritual warfare. We are.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to have that discernment to really see through that and understand what's happening to us. So the next thing I want to bring up with you, Karen, real quick, is I call it the expansion of spirituality. And I've been kind of catching a little bit of flack for this by some people, which I can't understand. But what I mean by this is, so we're at a point, Karen, where we are in a new age. And when I specify new age, I don't mean the new age movement. I mean, we are in a new age at this current period of time. And what I've started to see is that there is a revival, there's an upsurge of what I would call deeper spiritual information that
Mm-hmm.
is starting to manifest in the human collective consciousness. And what I've been saying right now is we need to expand upon spirituality. We need to start being the frontiersmen and women for this new age, because ultimately, when I look at the spiritualities of old, and don't get me wrong, the spiritualities of old not only got me to where I'm at today, also got Karen to where she is today. All right. They're great things. I'm not saying anything bad about them. What I am saying is that they come from a very old fundamentalist mindset in a lot of ways, especially when we look at things such as, Buddhism and, a lot of the other religions and spiritualities from back in the day. Very fundamentalist, but what we're moving towards is more of an embodiment of the spiritual. What I've been calling it is almost like a grassroots spirituality or a blue collar spirituality, almost, where we have our own subjective connection with the divine and we begin to embody these spiritual principles. And, we begin to live that life. It's no longer about the reading, it's about living the life. And through this, what I've noticed is people are starting to experience things and have these
Mhm.
experiences that haven't been really talked about in some of these older spiritual books. So, what I want to get your thoughts on is it time to start expanding spirituality? Is it time to start building off of what once was into what is currently in this new age?
I think it is. I think it is. But let me clarify a few things. And this is just, again, my own opinion. Okay.
Hmm.
I'm not trying to set myself up as a grand poobah or anything like that.
I know, Karen, I know.
But I was born in the mid 1950s. I've been around for a while, went through the school system and had I don't know, usual Canadian life, I suppose. But I was never given the concepts or the language to be able to speak about expanded spirituality. So, in other words, I could go to church, and if I didn't like this church, I could go to the one across the street that was more to my liking, or another church. And each church said it was the only way, and they were the only ones that were in touch with the true God. And if you leave, well, you're putting yourself at great mortal risk. Um, there's that. There's all kinds of things that we can put our faith in, in life. But the problem is we don't have concepts. So I had an unusual spiritual experience involving what I loosely call extraterrestrials. And I had the darndest time writing about it and finishing my book because I didn't have concepts, I didn't have language for those things. But what I'm seeing is a beautiful unfolding, like a flower that's coming into maturity. I'm seeing that people are starting to go, okay, maybe angels, maybe extraterrestrials, maybe aliens, maybe fairy folk. Maybe we're all talking about the same thing. And then likewise with the whole idea of the demons, maybe demons and ET and aliens and the fae are all the same thing. We used to think of that telekinesis and telepathy and remote viewing were all separate. Now we're starting to see it as a part of the same phenomenon. And so I
Mhm.
think it's a wonderful time for exploring our spirituality and doing these deep dives and listening to other people's stories and comparing notes and coming to a higher understanding. And then it all comes down to the newest ideas, cutting edge quantum physics, and then you compare that to the oldest of the old, and we're still talking about the same thing. It's basically love is a frequency, patience, goodness, all these beautiful things, peacefulness. Oh my God, does it ever feel good to just feel peaceful? And just
Mhm.
sit back in a comfortable chair or on your bed and feel super peaceful. There's other people like Greg Braden and others that have given great advice on just some simple meditation things that we can connect. And I got to tell you, the greatest thrill of my life is to connect with universal consciousness, which is what I call God, and be completely aware of it and know that it is completely aware of me. Wow, does that change the whole everything?
Absolutely. No, and I completely agree with that. And it is. It's the fundamental core principle of it is absolutely love. And this and it is. Right now I get you on the concepts also, because it is. When we start traversing into the very deeply esoteric territory, the words kind of start to break down. They absolutely do. A lot of it starts to really boil down into experience. It starts to boil down into feeling, and it can, and some people can actually, what's funny is some people can kind of put that into words now. And I kind of see like this evolution happening with people, because back when I first started this back in 2008, I remember, like, I would literally have to sit there with some of the people who were explaining this, and I would have to watch the video over and over again, like to grasp like some kind of understanding. And probably by like the third time I watched the video, I'd be like, okay, I get what he's saying. I understand now what he's saying. But what has started to emerge is there are a lot of people now who are taking these esoteric concepts and they are being able to break them down on what I would call a fifth grade reading level.
Mm-hmm.
And so now it's making the spiritual more accessible to the average person. Now it's not like, you don't have to be part of this inner circle anymore. You don't have to go on these long voyages to this monastery where you might have to take like a 3-month boat voyage, and then you get to the bottom of the mountain, and then you need to hike up that mountain, which could take you however long just to get to this monastery to read this one single book. So it's different. And now what's happening is we're having almost the spiritual being no, I don't want to say filtered down, but almost in some ways being transmuted into a way that everybody can understand. And this is, I think, going to be a real important part for what lies for spirituality in the future, and to bringing the new earth frequency completely into this existence, is understanding this. So that's why one of the biggest things, why I say we need to expand upon spirituality is I still see a lot of people in our community just getting very attached to like a very singular old text. I can't tell you how many people say, oh, the Kabbalion, or any other kind of different book or any kind of different spirituality, that they kind of just, die on that hill. But ultimately, we are in this new age. We have many different new ways we can foster our connection with the divine, and we have many new roads that we can take. So ultimately I feel where it comes from is, even in our community we got a little bit of the fundamentalism still, when it comes to certain aspects of our evolution. And I think what we need to do is we need to open ourselves up to what could possibly be, because I do feel not all of the old spiritualities, but I feel like some of them are, have half truths in them for a reason. We're talking about a very different age where, a lot of people weren't aware that they don't need a medium to connect with the divine. We can connect with the divine within ourselves. So that's where I'm coming from on that. Like, I think, we see a lot of people like who just get stuck in these rigid ways, and I feel like that could be holding us back, in the sense, collectively, from branching out and embracing what I would call the very true core spirituality which exists within us all. What are your
Mm-hmm.
thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, I would agree with you, Stephen. And like, I'm not saying that religion is wrong. Religion can be a beautiful, beautiful way to evolve, but it all kind of depends. So the thing is that what I've noticed about us humans, even myself, is we really tend to sometimes look for simplistic solutions. Like, for instance, in the past, I thought if I went to the right church, of course, that's part of their what they would say anyway, was like, then God would bless me and I wouldn't have problems because God would magically, like a fairy godmother with a magic wand, would fix everything for me. Also with age, I've come to understand that a lot of the problems I had in my life were actually very good to help me to be where I'm at right now. So I couldn't see it at the time, a lot of things, but I mean, you could say the same thing about everything, even changing your diet. Like, it doesn't seem like fun, not at all. But you get through it. And then on the other side, you realize it prepared you for something else. So I had a lot of shitty things happen to me in my life. But guess what? They prepared me to be super fearless and strong now that we're going through
Mhm.
all this other change in consciousness, political upheaval, you name it, right? It's helped me to be super strong and to be better at what I'm doing and expanding my own spirituality. So I'm sorry, I guess I went off on a tangent. I don't
No,
know
you're
if I answered your question, but I just think that it takes a whole lot of work, and from different places. Like, for instance, I study psychology. Well, I've taken psychology at university and college, but I also keep up to date with it and study a bit of psychology, quantum physics. I keep track of what's going on in the metaphysical communities. I keep track of what's going on in the ET communities. Unfortunately, a lot of people don't realize, in my opinion, they're all part of the same community, whether they're into Bigfoot, ET,
Mhm.
transcendental meditation, or experimenting with telepathy, remote viewing. I think all of that is actually, we're part of one really big community, and we're outside of the box. It's almost like if we're all in a giant room with a whole bunch of doors, and some doors are a religion, and some doors are an ET belief system, and some
Mhm.
doors are something else. And we go through these doors and we find out we're all in the same room. Here we are, all in the same room. Makes me happy, and I don't have to argue with anybody. So again, dealing with our ego, dealing with our shadow, dealing with projection. A lot of people do not even realize that we project onto others what we don't want to see within. And all of
Mhm.
us, you, me, everybody, we got a beautiful, loving, bright side, and we got a shitty old outhouse side too. And we gotta, work on being aware of both. And, I got to the point where I realized, like, I used to be so angry at the powers that be on this planet. But then I thought about it and I thought, you know what? If I was born into their family with their genetics and had their brainwashing and their, growing up in that culture, I'd probably be the same way. So it's not saying that, oh, I want to be like the parasite class, not at all. But
Mhm.
it's really hard to hate them when you realize that under the right circumstances, that might be me and not them. Do you know what I mean, Stephen? So there's a bit of
I
that in
completely
there
agree.
too.
I completely agree with you. It is. It's also it's the understanding of the darkness within ourselves. And honestly, it's to me what overcomes that is the acceptance for that darkness, and to have that acceptance and to actually love those really nasty parts of yourself and find a way to love them because there is. I mean, we all have that polarity inside of us, and
Hmm.
to act like we don't, yeah, we'd be lying to ourselves in that case if we acted like we didn't have that. But no, I completely agree with what you said about there. It is hard, because you see, not only do you see the light within people that's within you, you also see the dark. And, even Carl Jung says that, any
Mhm.
kind of judgment you have towards somebody is ultimately a behavior or a trait of yourself that you have suppressed into your subconscious mind. So it's becoming free of that judgment and having that understanding of, that not only does the light exist within us, the darkness does too. It's what we choose to allow to it's
Mhm.
what we choose to emanate into this reality. Do we choose to emanate the light, or do we choose to emanate the dark? And ultimately, we see that when we choose to emanate the light into this reality, that a different world opens up before us, and then the divine will reciprocate with us for emanating its light into this existence. The other cool thing you said too is about, how everybody's essentially in the same community, and I actually just posted something about this on X and on Facebook. But ultimately, what every single side of this community is showing you, whether you have the Bigfoots, whether you have the cryptid, enthusiasts, whether you have the extraterrestrial enthusiasts, whether you have, the ones who are interested in transcendental meditation, like you were saying, you have the conspiracy enthusiasts, all of this stuff, every single rabbit hole, every single theory is all meant to show us that there is an underlying spiritual nature to this existence. That's what it's all pointing us towards. And I was kind of responding to somebody who was talking about rabbit holes, on how if you continuously chase the rabbit hole, you're never going to reach the end, because what this rabbit hole is showing you is that you are the answer that you are looking for. There is a spiritual nature to this existence. It needs to be acknowledged, it needs to be embodied. This is ultimately where all of this leads us, so I do. It's funny how everybody, and I've gone and I've separated it myself a time or two, which I'm guilty of. I talk about how the conscious collective has its many little subsections in it, but ultimately we're all one collective in this. We're all ultimately one. And that's the thing too that I try to hammer down in my shows. It seems impossible because people are still arguing about if the earth is flat or round, and people are arguing about the grays and the reptilians, who's the one most responsible for what's going on right now. And the biggest kicker is we are ultimately responsible for what's going on right now. And that's the hardest pill for anybody to swallow. But any final thoughts about that, Karen?
Well, there is one thing I want to say, and that is ultimately we have free will. And just because you can do something and possibly get away with it doesn't mean you should. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of us are not even taught that. So when you go to work and you start realizing you're jealous and you're resentful and you've got all these things that, oh my gosh, you just don't really want to look at. Once you accept it, it's kind of like having two different forces, and you learn to sort of integrate them, like a brother and sister who will probably always fight, but they're still part of the same family. But I think it's really important to know, just because you can do something doesn't mean you should do it. And that took me a long time to understand really what that meant in so many ways. It's a really good tool, I would say, to remember that. And to remember that when other people do things, no matter how abhorrent, there is, under the right circumstances, the right pressures, there's a chance we would do the same. We don't really understand. We're very limited in our perception of what we're seeing is going on there. And then, of course, there's all the lies and all the deception. And I think probably another thing I want to say is that I think it's really good if we stick to people, regardless whether it's online or in person, stick to people who clearly show signs that they have empathy. And we got to
Absolutely.
be really aware of the empathy deficient. And the empathy deficient can be your church leader, could be your doctor, could be your neighbor. You don't know until you know, but you've got this sense inside of you that can sort of discern things. And there's little red flags, and we need to be astute and aware so that we're picking up on those. But as soon as we find out who our friends are, and sometimes this takes a bit of time, oh my God, you can trust them to the moon and back. It's so fabulous.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I agree with all of that, you know. And the what I'm going to say for my closing thoughts on this is, guys, right now is the time, okay? We have to remove fear, okay? And we have to stand up and we have to take our power back as a people. We could take our power back subjectively. A lot of us have already done that, but now it's time we need to move into the collective aspect of taking our power back in order to make an energetic stand and put on an energetic front to combat a lot of this moral decay that's going on and a lot of the plan that's trying to be put in place. Now, let me emphasize, I'm not saying grab your pitchforks and torches and march on down to your state capitol building. I'm not saying that, okay? Because that's what they want you to do. But it's as simple as saying no. It's as simple as maybe taking an extra 5 to 10 minutes, like Karen did at the airport, and getting a pat down so you don't get irradiated by a X-ray machine. You know, it's as simple as saying no to junk food and all of this bad matrix food and eating real clean organic food. It's as simple as the content that you intake. Okay, because here in the United States, energy, focus, and engagement is the currency. Okay, so wherever you put your focus, ultimately everything is going to adapt to that. This is why we don't have to pick up our pitchforks and torches. If we understand that the collective consciousness is what manifests reality, if we shift our collective consciousness into the right place, into the right frequency, reality will fall into place with that frequency. So don't have fear. Just learn that there's no time for fear and you don't have anything to fear if you are doing right by yourself, your loved ones, and other humans. And that is where I'm going to leave that at for today. Karen, why don't you tell everybody where they can find you real quick so they can check you out and get your new book as well?
You can find me on most platforms at Karen Holton TV, or as part of the Forbidden Knowledge Network. I'm on all audio podcasts under the Quantum Guide Show with Karen Holton. And this week I have a very interesting lineup as usual. And as I say that, my
Nice.
guest for Wednesday just slipped my mind. But on Sunday on the Aliens and Angels podcast, we're going to be talking about are all the grays, the ETs that we call grays, are they all
Mhm.
one race, or are there many? Like, why are there so many different accounts out there about the grays? Some say no, they don't do hybrid children. Others say, oh yes, they are doing hybrid children. Some say they smell bad. Some say they smell fine. Some say they have no intelligence and no emotions. Others say they do. So we're going to talk about it in the live chat. So that should be interesting on Sunday. And so we're going to do that. And
Nice.
yeah, I guess that's about it. You can find my book anywhere on Amazon. It is called Transdimensional Meet the New Neighbors. And it's my true life paranormal experiences. And I guess that's about it, Stephen. Thank you so much for having me on. Love to have discussions with you, and keep up the good
Absolutely.
work.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you. And of course, when this airs, all of Karen's links will be in the both the YouTube and the Rumble description. So yeah, go ahead and check her out and get a copy of her book. And this is what we do, guys. This is how we support each other in this community, and this is how we build the foundation for New Earth. We support each other, and supporting Karen's book and her cause as well is helping support New Earth, just like supporting all of us. So this is how we bring it into the picture, guys. Well, thanks so much for joining us for this FKN panel, Karen. If you can hang out just for a sec, I'll get you.
Yeah.
We'll get you taken care of. And other than that, guys, you know what we say here on BG Cast. We say stay safe, stay free, have that personal agency and that personal sovereignty. And for the love of God, don't be like Elon Musk and stay away from the Japanese sex robots. Everybody have a good night. Take care.
Thank you for joining me for the Quantum Guide Show. Become the change that you wish to see in the world. Subscribe to my YouTube and other channels at Karen Holton TV. Click the like button, leave me a comment, and share this podcast with your friends. Read about my true life ET contact in my book called Transdimensional: Meet the New Neighbors, which is now available in Amazon bookstores worldwide. Check out my website at www.KarenHoltonHealthCoach.com to see my free resources and amazing products and services. All the links will be in the description below. As part of the Forbidden Knowledge Network, you will find the Quantum Guide Show with Karen Holton and also the Aliens and Angels podcast on all audio platforms. Until next time, keep up the good work.